I have to ask you to reflect back on some of the experiences and the people that you've met along the way, and some of the landmarks that come to mind. What have you enjoyed most about your role at the university, Darrel?
Well, I have to say that, first of all, the university has provided a real opportunity for me career-wise. I started out my career at Cornell University, and as soon as an opportunity became available to come back to the Midwest, and particularly to the University of Illinois, I did that, and it's been the best choice, best decision I've made, and I've enjoyed a long career here. And probably what got it started off on such a good note was my mentor, Tom Hieronymus. Not many people remember Tom anymore, but Tom was an icon in the commodity world, and I learned a lot from him in terms of his understanding of markets and what make markets work. And that went a long way to help me in my career. So Tom has passed, of course, now, but made such a difference in my life. And there's been so many. I mean, Illinois agriculture is such a large, vibrant industry that it's just been a pleasure to work with that industry. So many people in the media, in the industry, producers. It's just hard to limit the list very much.
You know, here you are just not too many miles down the road from the Chicago Board of Trade, and of course there were many people up there in those firms that always had plenty of analysis, many of them talking their positions, I think, at times. Did you feel any influence or pressure from the fact that here you were, an agriculture economist at major land-grant school in the same state as the biggest grain market in the world?
Really no direct pressure. We worked very closely over time with the Chicago Board of Trade. They had a very vibrant educational department, and we worked together in terms of providing programming for them for different levels of the industry. And they've always been very supportive of our program, really never tried to influence to any degree what we did, but provided resources for us. So like many aspects of agriculture here in this state, they've provided a lot of good resources for the university.
How about a comment about USDA's ability, pardon me, sir, USDA's ability to assess crops? And I ask you this in the wake of the August crop report. I'm trying to recall a report in the years that I've been reporting on markets and the estimates of crop size, trying to recall another report that was so doubted by producers and some trading firms. I mean, the reaction was, no, that can't be right. Everybody was saying that can't be right. Has USDA sustained any credibility problems because of the August crop report, even worse than they were?
You know, there was a lot of disbelief about the report, and as you've pointed out, since the report came out, many private analysts have raised their estimate to that of the USDA. So while they want to discredit the USDA's forecast, they tend to come in line with that. Whether they've lost any credibility or not, I think is yet to be seen, where we come in next week on the September report, and then on the final number. We'll be awfully close in October. I have a lot of respect for the folks at USDA NASS who put together these numbers. They have a methodology that's tried and true. They haven't deviated from that. And I would point out they do rely heavily on input from farmers in making these early forecasts of yield. So I like to punch a little bit sometimes and say USDA is telling producers what producers told them. If we want to be too critical, we have to be a little careful, I think. But they have a very sound statistical methodology. But it goes without saying, trying to forecast yields in late July, early August is difficult at best. You can measure what's out there in terms of numbers of ears, number of pods, and so on. But those counts are not always a good predictor of final yield. So they're the best at what they do, but it's a tough job.
Should we do away with an August crop report because that's such a moving target in August?
No, I don't think we should. If you look at the USDA's track record the last few years, they've basically been dead on in August. Even going back to 2012, which is one of the worst droughts we've ever experienced in this country, the USDA's August yield forecast for corn was exactly equal to their final forecast for the year. So they do a reasonably good job given the challenge they have. I've kind of come and gone on whether we should be doing an August report, but I've kind of settled on the fact that we probably should continue to have it.
What about all this old crop corn that's sitting around? Any thoughts on our farmer ability or inability to market that old crop and the fact that so much of it is still around?
Yeah, we don't know yet how much was still around. We'll get the September 1 stocks report at the end of this month, but frankly, we don't have any more corn around this year than we had last year. It may be located in different places than it was last year, and it's more corn than we really need. The market is obviously telling us that. But when you produce more corn than you use, somebody has to store it. And that typically falls back on the farmer to store that corn from one marketing year to the next if there's not a market for it. So that's what's happened again this year.
Quick question about the hurricane. One thing that occurs to me is all of those hogs and chickens that need to be fed down there in the southeast part of the country. And if some of those crops are wiped out, they're going to need corn and beans from somewhere. Will it be pulled down from the eastern corn belt? Will it perhaps affect the basis? Or might they look down in the southern hemisphere and say, send us a cargo?
No, I would think that most of that will come from the U.S., eastern corn belt, perhaps into the Delta a little bit, Kentucky, Tennessee, where we're seeing an early harvest there, good crops, that there will be plenty available and they can get it in there, assuming the damage is not long-lasting or too severe.
Do you think all of the talk about vessels coming into Wilmington is a little bit overdone? Vessels coming up from the southern hemisphere?
We may eventually see that. I mean, it's a question of economics, pure and simple. If it can be sourced cheaper from South America, it will happen, and we've done that from time to time. It's primarily soybeans for the processing plants there.
Finally, I need to ask you about the land-grant college system. Are you a little concerned about the future and being able to sustain the support that is needed, whether it's state support or whether it's at the federal level, so that the land-grant colleges can be as vibrant, as important in research, as important in analysis, and have the kind of the people such as Paul Ellinger and yourself on there doing the job? Will we be able to maintain it in the future?
It's probably a question I ought to defer to Paul a little bit on it, but I'm pretty optimistic. I mean, we rely much more heavily, frankly, on the private sector for funding than we have in the past. State funding as a percentage of total funding for the university is down substantially over the years. But I think the resources are clearly adequate, and I think folks understand the role that the land-grant university plays and enjoy the benefits of that. So I'm confident that we will continue to see adequate support.
Well, it's a privilege to always visit with you, sir, and thanks for taking the time this time, Darrel. How about a big round of applause for a gentleman who has served you so well through the years?